everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Shauna. I'm here to do a book haul. Boop, boop, boop. Love books. So it was a bit of a stressful day today. So I went to Barnes & Noble because some people stress eat, I stress bookshop. Which all things considered is not terrible. It's also not great for my wallet. So I was really excited about this haul though, because this will be my first haul on BookTube. So excited, but also just because I got some really cool, I found some really cool things and I'm really excited to share it with you all. So the first book I picked up is Shadow of the Wind by Ruiz Zafon. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've heard really good things about this book. This book is set in Barcelona in 1945. Follow our main character, Daniel. He has picked up a book after a war-torn city and begins reading it and falls in love with it and wants to find other works by the same author. And as he goes out to try to find these books, he's realizing that all of these books are mysteriously disappearing, being he can't find any of them. And so he goes on the hunt to track them down, and he realizes that this book that he has may be the last copy of this author ever written. So he starts to discover a lot of weird things going on. It just sounds really interesting, and I love books about books, so I was excited about this one. This one's gonna be, I think, pretty good. The next book I got was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you haven't already watched my video on If you haven't already watched my January wrap-up video, I read Daisy Jones and the Six in January, and that was the first book I had ever read by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I loved it. It's fabulous. I'm still reeling from it. I kind of want to reread it already. That's how good it was for me. So I wanted to, and I'd heard good things about Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I figured that if I absolutely love Daisy Jones and the Six, I would probably really like this too, since it's by the same author. So it follows a Hollywood icon, Evelyn Hugo, and she is basically recounting her story to a writer to kind of write this all down about her life. She's a Hollywood star. She's been very closed off to society, essentially, about her personal life. But throughout her life, she's had 7 husbands. And so she is talking to this writer about all of her husbands and about her life growing up, becoming a Hollywood star, all of those things. And it sounds really intriguing and kind of sounds like it's set up very similar to Daisy Jones and the Six. And so I'm really interested to see how this kind of comes into play, because I know this came out first before Daisy Jones. So I'm excited to see more of this author's work. I feel like I'm really gonna love this because, like I said, I really loved Daisy Jones. Let's do this one. Okay. Oh no, they're falling. Okay. I have too many, so they're just falling all over the place. So the next one I got is actually a poetry collection. It's called The Light Filters in Poems by Kaufman, and I guess she's I don't know if I'm living under a rock. Apparently she's an Instagram sensation. The name sounds familiar. I'm gonna have to look it up. But this sounded really interesting. This is her first poetry collection, and it's just about, it says, with raw honesty and emotion, this captures the varied, wondrous moments that define what it means to be human. Giving up too much of yourself to someone else, not fitting in, endlessly Googling how to be happy, figuring out who you want to be. So that just sounds like something I really need to read. And this was actually in the young adult section. So I feel like it's gonna be super relatable for people. Yes, probably more so young adult, as in teenagers, high school, middle school kind of thing. But obviously I still read a lot of young adult stuff, so I relate apparently. But also it could be new adult as well, because I feel like new adult books are either lumped in with young adult or lumped in with adult. You don't ever know. You just kind of have to pick in the dark, and then you realize it once you're reading it. So I feel like this is kind of gonna be kind of along the lines of that. And flipping through some of this at the bookstore, I was really intrigued. Some of the poems already kind of stood out to me, and I feel like I'm really gonna relate to this and have it be a really fun well, I say fun time, but it's gonna be probably super emotional and gutting at times, but I feel like it's gonna be super relatable and something that I really enjoy. So I'm excited for this. Next book I got is Keystone by Katie Delahanty? Katie Delahanty. I think that's how you pronounce it. So this book follows our main character, Ella. I need to read these before I start filming. Okay, so this book follows our main character, Ella, who is a influencer, essentially. And it's following her life and how kind of entitled she is and very uppity she could be, and all of a sudden those things are taken away from her. She basically loses everything, and she joins a secret society called Keystone, which is basically kind of a school for thieves. They teach her how to steal things, I guess. And of course she partners up with a guy in this school who's helping her. So she goes essentially back to being an influencer, kind of undercover, to discover what all of this stuff is going on, because apparently there are some devious things happening within the influencer world. I thought this sounded really cool. At first it was talking about influencers, which kind of grabbed me, but then again, I don't really read a lot of contemporary stuff, and so I was almost a little put off by it, but then it twisted and has this kind of cool new view on it, I think. And so I think in this day and age with influencers and all that entails, this sounds really interesting. And I know people have kind of been jumping on that bandwagon of telling stories about influencers within novels and things like that lately. But this sounds like it has a very cool kind of twist on that sort of story. So I'm excited to find out what it is. Next one I picked up, I'm so excited about because I got the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition and it's so pretty. It is actually a poetry collection. Surprise, surprise. It's The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur, or Kaur. I don't know how to say her name. So obviously, she's very famous set of poetry, and I've kind of had my eye on it and had my eye on Milk and Honey for a long time. Never committed to picking them up or checking them out. Something about this cover just drew me. And when it says exclusive on the cover, I'm like, ooh, I need to get it. So I did. And I am excited to read this though. Again, I kind of flipped through this one as well in the bookstore, like the last poetry collection, just to kind of get a feel and get a vibe for kind of how the poetry is going to be and the writer's sort of style. And I'm really excited for it because, again, I found a couple I already had fallen in love with just reading it in the bookstore. Last book that I have picked up is A Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. This is, I believe, a retelling of The Evil Queen from Snow White, I want to say. It's very loosely based off of that. So we follow Zafon. She is a peasant girl but she's destined to be empress of Fenglu. So I'm so sorry if I butcher that. But she is destined to be this great leader, and obviously comes along struggles along the way, which kind of start to turn her evil, essentially, into the evil queen. I guess. I don't know. So I believe it's set in a fictional world, but it's very loosely based off of Snow White, and it's kind of set in more of the Asian culture. So that was really kind of what drew me to it, is that it's a retelling, but it's set in a new kind of environment. And so I thought that was really cool, really interesting. It sounded really good, and it's about a powerful, strong woman choosing power, essentially. I don't know how else to describe it. That's kind of how it came across to me. It sounded really intriguing, and I haven't heard of this at all. I haven't heard of this author. And whenever I go to a bookstore, I kind of like to, yes, get books that I've kind of had my eye on for a while, if that's what I'm feeling. But I also always try to kind of push myself to get a book either outside of my comfort zone, or one I've never heard of, or by an author I've never heard of. Just something new. Give something new a try. Go in blind, essentially, and see how it goes. But this sounds really interesting, and I'm excited. to give it a try. In case you're wondering what I'm currently reading right now, I'm reading from the library, A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. She is a French writer. This is her debut series. I cannot believe this is a debut so far. Like, I'm almost halfway through it. And this is, it's good. It's really good. The writing style is great, but it was originally written in French and then translated over into English. This book is basically, I'm still kind of trying to wrap my brain around the world because it's such a unique concept. So these characters essentially live on what are called arcs. And so they kind of look very similar to this, or at least this is what I picture when she describes it in the book. And we follow our main character, Ophelia, yes. We follow our main character, Ophelia. She is very nerdy, very introverted, does not like to talk to other people very much. She just likes to observe and listen and just see what's going on around her in the world. And she is essentially married off to someone on a completely different arc. She's never traveled to another arc, and on each of these arcs, they have their own ancestor. I'm assuming is immortal, but I'm not quite sure just yet. But they kind of rule over each arc, and they all have their own unique traits. Let's just go with that. And so these arcs kind of are like in the air. They talk about past times, and it really kind of refers to a lot of like war memorabilia. And she works in a museum where she is in charge of watching over these items and kind of educating the public on the past world and the past life before these arcs were kind of established. And so that's really interesting to me when it's in a fantasy world, but it's somewhat loosely rooted in our world. Kind of like apocalyptic, sort of, in a way. She is forced to marry someone who is not on her arc, and he comes to kind of collect her and whisks her off to his arc that he lives on, and it turns out he's a very important political figure. But he really only kind of struck this bargain with her family to marry her for his own purposes. And so you're learning about all of those nuances and things like that. But she can travel through mirrors, which is really freaking cool. And she's a reader. She's a reader. She is able to hold objects and read them, kind of be able to tell you any person who's kind of picked up these items, and she can kind of see the journey that this item has had along the way. So she doesn't like to touch a lot of the stuff that's from the wars, any bullets or anything that's from the war and from that time, because of the grief and the pain that's kind of attached to it, because she can read all of those things as well. She can kind of see its lifespan from that time. So it's really interesting so far. And I was devouring it for a time. And then I'm also in the middle of reading the third book in the Broken Land series by D.A. White. And it's the third book, and it's called Wayfarer's Keep. I talk about it in my January wrap-up video. I talk about the series in general. It's good so far. I'm listening to the audiobook. I do it for my book club that I meet with once a month. It's just me and two other girls, and we have so much fun. Just kind of these guilty pleasure books that we're reading together. It's great. Yeah, so that's currently what I'm reading right now. Thanks for tuning in for another video. I really appreciate you guys coming back to my channel. If you're new here, love it if you'd subscribe. You'll get more bookish content from me, as well as some other things in the future. Who knows? Follow me on this journey. It'll be fun, I promise. I will make sure it's fun and a good time. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it if you like this video to give it a thumbs up. It will really help my channel out. Share it with all your friends, book clubs, book friends, book people. All share the book love. I love it so much. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.